Hi everyone, I'm Sassycritic. I talk about films, television shows, and everything around it. So if that's your thing, hop on for the ride. And what a ride it is, because today we're going to be talking about shows we believe everyone should watch at least once in their life. Now, as I'm filming this, I went to Instagram yesterday and I asked you guys, what are some shows you believe everyone should watch at least once in their life? And you guys really pulled through. I got some really interesting answers. A lot of the shows I have definitely watched, but some of the shows I have not even heard of, which was a really interesting take. But yeah, so thank you so much, guys. Also, be sure to follow me on Instagram. That will be sass underscore say it. I will put it somewhere on the screen. And be sure to follow along my Instagram stories, because I'm going to start asking you guys some questions. And it'll be TV recommendations or film recommendations. But either way, if you want to participate in that, you have to be following the Instagram page. Right. Also, be sure to subscribe. At the time that I'm filming this, we are on to 224 subscribers, which is insane. So our next goal is to hit 500 subscribers. So if you are someone that likes long film discussions, or whether you are someone who likes the short timing reviews, be sure to subscribe, because this is the channel for you. Also, be sure to turn on that notification bell so that you do not miss a video. Alright, so the question for today is, what are some shows that everyone should watch at least once? Alright, this is going to be an interesting one, and I think we've taken a lot of time in the intro, so with that said, let's jump into it. So first up, we have Game of Thrones. So the person who recommended this said Game of Thrones, with the exception of season 8, which is a funny and interesting take, though. But what I will say is Game of Thrones was huge. Like, I never watched it when it came out, because, I was like 12. And after watching the first episode, I would definitely say that's not appropriate for a 12-year-old. But I eventually started watching Game of Thrones when I got to university, and everyone else was like on season 7, season 8. But I started watching the show in college, and I love it. I loved it. What I will say though is that I did not finish the full show. And that is because when people started talking about season 8 and how bad it apparently is, like, that kind of discouraged me. But what I will say is the parts of the show that I did watch, I really enjoyed. I did try and read A Song of Ice and Fire, but that book is over 1,000 pages long, and I attempted and I could not finish it. And then I tried to read the graphic novel. The graphic novel is really good, but again, I did not finish it. What I will say is I'm really into House of the Dragon. Like, that is a really compelling show, and I love the effects, because like of how the dragons look. Like, they look really cool. What I will say is the only thing I don't like in House of the Dragon, and I also don't like it in Game of Thrones, is the whole how do I say it? The in family relationships. Like, I did not need that in my life. Not gonna lie, I did not need that. Like, at the time I was watching season 1 of House of the Dragon, everyone was talking about Daemon and Rhaenyra, and I was just like, are we talking about the same people? That literally made me uncomfortable. But the show itself is really interesting. So the first 2 seasons are out. I can't wait for season 3. And yeah, I know that there's going to be another Game of Thrones spin-off called Duncan and the Egg, something like that. Either way, I'm waiting for like more announcements, because I'm looking forward to watching that one. I can't wait for the trailer to come out. I'm hoping that they are gonna go through with it. But yeah, Game of Thrones. Do I think it's a show everyone should watch at least once? Yes, 100%. If you can stomach, I just like stomach the action and the violence and stuff like that. What I will say is that Game of Thrones has a really good balance of drama and action, and it's also in a fantasy setting. So if you are someone that likes those elements and you still haven't seen Game of Thrones, definitely go ahead and do so. The next show that was recommended as one that you need to watch at least once in your life is 911. So this series is currently available on Disney Plus. It follows the 911 responders, EMTs, firefighters, and police as they respond to like emergencies that are happening out there. Now, I got into the show because Connie Britton's in it. And I love Connie Britton. Love that woman. I saw her in Nashville. And I was just like, yes, huge fan. She was also in Spin City. So I loved her shows. And when I heard that she's in 911, I watched it. So I got into it. Do I feel like it's a show that should be watched at least once? So this is one where I can't really comment on much because I only saw the first season. And you guys are going to hate me as to why I only watched the first season of 911. It's literally because Connie Britton leaves the show after the first season, and she was the reason why I started watching 911. So after that, I was kind of like, okay, yeah, that's it. I did try and watch season 2, episode 1, and I did find it good, and I was a bit surprised to see Jennifer Love Hewitt, Jennifer Love Hewitt, icon, but it wasn't enough to keep me on the show, and I know it's just coming across as like a small reason as to why, or rather like a petty reason as to why I chose not to continue watching 911, but when I tell you I love Connie Britton, I love Connie Britton, okay? So I just never continued the show. So I can't really comment if the show should be watched at least once. What I will say is the first season that I did see is really good. So I highly recommend watching the first season. I did watch a YouTube video. Someone was like analyzing the like 7 seasons of the show and what happens and stuff, and I was just like, okay, that actually does sound interesting. And I have 1 or 2 mutual friends on TikTok and on Instagram who love 911 and constantly talk about it. So the more they talk about it, I just kind of just want to be like, maybe I kind of want to jump in, but I also have a ton to catch up on. So that was interesting. So next up, we have On My Block. It's on Netflix. Okay, so this is another one of those shows that I watched in university. And a friend of mine really loved the show. And I remember she was talking about it when we were in university together. And that's when I decided I'm going to give the show a chance. And I'm so glad that I did, because I watched the first 4 seasons out of 5. And what I did see was just entertainment. I felt like there was a good mix of drama, comedy, and even romance that was really good. And I love the fact that you have characters that change and grow over time, and they have their own distinct personalities, but they still find themselves being within this friend group. So yes, I would definitely say On My Block, one of those shows you need to watch at least once. Next up, we have Buffy the Vampire Slayer. By the way, shout out to all the millennials who subscribed. So I can't tell you much about the show. I never grew up watching it. I don't even think I was born when the show came out, which is kind of giving away my age. But what I will say is, I know it stars Sarah Michelle Gellar, and that there's supernatural creatures in it. That's all I know. I did watch a video which was talking about Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but I've never seen a single episode. What I will say is, as someone who considers herself to be half millennial, half Gen Z, do not ask me on the logic. There is no logic in this. I just identify as that. As someone who is half millennial, half Gen Z, I will say that I keep on going back and forth as to what I want to watch. If I want to watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or if I want to watch Charmed. And spoiler alert, Charmed was not recommended as a show that should be watched at least once. So I think that just answers the question. Do I feel like the show should be watched at least once? I feel like with millennials, a lot of millennials are talking about Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I think because it is seen as a show that was really nostalgic, especially for millennials, I would definitely say watch at least once. Alright, next up we have Severance. I can already feel that if my brother is watching this video, he is literally saying, I told you so. Because my brother has been recommending me Severance since it came out. And now someone on Instagram recommended it to me. So when he sees this video, he's just gonna say I told you so. But anyway, I've only seen about 3 episodes of Severance. What I know about the show is that it's basically like when you go to work, your memories of home and family are like gone, and you only remember work stuff. And then when you go home, your memories of work are gone, so you only remember home and family stuff. And things get interesting with that. Now, I have only seen like the first 3 episodes, so I don't really know much. I don't know if I should continue watching the show. I've been recommended the show all the time. Every single time a new episode came out, my brother or my friends would recommend that I watch Severance. So, I don't know, maybe I'll get into it at a later stage and then I can actually talk about the show in more detail. What I will say is, I do feel like it is one of those shows that you do need to watch at least once. It does come across that way, especially with how popular it is, or at least how popular it is with the people in my circle because of how much they talk about the show. So, yeah, I would definitely say it should be watched at least once. Okay, so now I kind of just want to go through a rapid fire. So these are shows that have been recommended to watch at least once in your life, but I literally know little to nothing about the show, so we're just going to go through them fairly quickly. First up is Community, and I've heard some TV show discussions about the show. I just know little to nothing about, so yeah, it gets to be put in this category. The next one is Sherlock. I only watched 1 episode of the show when I was in high school. Someone really liked the show, and I remember one of my teachers put the show on, so we watched an episode. So what I watched, it was pretty good. Next one is a show called Merlin. I assume that it's the same Merlin from like King Arthur, so that's interesting. I actually didn't know that the show existed. Next up, we have a show called Lie to Me. This is an interesting one. So, I did try and see in the description what the show is about, and I saw psychologists. So, I don't know if I will go back and watch this show. I think there's only like 2 seasons, if I'm not mistaken. If I am mistaken, please, correct me in the comments. But it was an interesting one that was recommended to me. I didn't really know that the show existed until I did this prompt. So thank you for the recommendation as well as shows that you should watch at least once in your life. Okay, and now I just want to do a final category. So these will be TV shows I recommend that, like, I personally would recommend that you watch at least once in your life and why. Starting off with The Good Place. The Good Place is a really good show, and all I can say about it without spoiling it too much is that it follows a woman by the name of Eleanor Shellstrop. She ends up in the good place, but she believes that she shouldn't be there. And so she tries to become a better person through her soulmate, Chidi and Ogonye. This is a really good show. It's really philosophical, and it was one of those shows that I easily fell in love with. I still find myself rewatching it. The reason why I say everyone should watch it at least once is that there's a good balance of comedy, there's a tiny bit of romance, but it's really philosophical and it can really go deep, especially when it comes to the morals and values of people, and whether you should be good or not. How good should you be? Is how bad to the certain extent can you be without being permanently punished. I really enjoyed this show, and the fact that I rewatched some of the episodes is a good sign that it should be watched at least once. Next up is BoJack Horseman. Oh my goodness. If you had to tell me that one show that is accurate about mental health, mental illness, and handles it in a mature manner, but also has a good balance of comedy, is one that is about an animated horse, I would tell you that you are lying to me. You're clearly joking, and please come back to me when you are serious. But BoJack Horseman talks about mental health and mental illness in a way that is really compelling. So compelling that I even did my university psychology assignment on BoJack Horseman, and I'm kind of going into spoiler territory, but I wrote my psychology assignment on BoJack Horseman and the PTSD that he experienced. So I think that's all you need to know about BoJack. But BoJack Horseman follows this sort of has-been BoJack, who is a horse, and he used to be really famous in the 90s, and he had his own sitcom. But he's a lot older now, and he's a lot less relevant in the public. But the show really goes deeper than that. It dives into themes of mental health and mental illness. And as I said before, there's a good balance of comedy as well. And I think it handles mental health and mental illness in a mature way. And it definitely handles it in a way that is relatable, without it feeling like it's preaching to you, or like telling you this is how you should handle your anxiety, this is how you should handle your depression. No, it kind of takes it as it is, and it breaks it down in easy chunks. And I wrote my psychology essay on BoJack Horseman and his PTSD, but what I didn't say is that I will sometimes find myself reading BoJack Horseman quotes. And a lot of them are funny, but some of them are just deep. My favorite one from the entire series is, there's like this character who's a monkey, and he was saying that it gets easier every day. But you have to do it every day. That's the hard part, but it does get easier. And I live by that statement. I live by that statement today. Things are hard, things are difficult, but you gotta do it every day. Consistency is key, and getting to that consistency is difficult. That's the hard part, but it does get easier the more consistent you are. And after hearing that quote, I was like, yeah, that's my favorite quote of all time. I don't think anything could top it, in my opinion, but here we are. So BoJack Horseman, it's a TV show I believe everyone should watch at least once. And the final show that I believe everyone should watch at least once in your life is The Golden Girls. Y'all saw this coming. If you are someone who knows me personally or you've followed and subscribed me for a while, you would know that The Golden Girls is my favorite comedy of all time. I find myself rewatching the show so many times, and I think that just explains it. But that's not why I'm saying that you guys should watch it at least once. But I'm getting ahead of myself. What is The Golden Girls about? So The Golden Girls follows four older women as they live in a house in Miami, Florida. And the show tackles issues that I would argue are ahead of its time, and some are even relevant to today. Issues such as racism, sexism, and ageism, and so much more. There's an episode of The Golden Girls that talks about deportation. And I never thought that would be found in an episode of The Golden Girls, but here we are. The show was airing in the 1980s, and the last episode aired in 1992. So I think it just tells you like how ahead of its time it was. There's an entire episode on HIV/AIDS, and I know that AIDS was widespread in the 1980s, but the way that they handle that episode is so well done. They spoke about a topic that people didn't want to talk about back then and had a very big stigma, and the Golden Girls just took it in and did it to the best of their ability. There's an episode on fat phobia where Blanche's daughter comes to visit, and, you know, there's a shock that she is overweight, that, you know, she is fat. But then the girls kind of come to term about it when her daughter brings a boyfriend, and that boyfriend is being very fat phobic. And I watched this episode and I was just like, this is a really good episode. What I like about The Golden Girls is the fact that a lot of the jokes are still funny to today. You can still laugh at it. Some of the jokes did not stand the test of time, but I will say like 90% of the jokes did. So you can go ahead and watch it and not feel bad for laughing at majority of the jokes. What I love about this series is that even though I'm really young, like I'm only in my mid-20s, it's that Golden Girls really taught me that no matter how old I am, it's never too late to do what I want to do. These women are in their 40s and 50s, and they date, they go out, they spend nights over with men, and it's crazy. Like, this is a show about women in their 40s and 50s, and, you know, Sophia is in her 80s. And I get it. If you just fast forward a few years later, you get Sex and the City, which aired in the late 90s, I believe. And I guess that's a good example. I haven't watched too many episodes of the series, so I can't really comment on that, but I can comment on The Golden Girls, and I will say that Golden Girls is a really good show, and I feel like a lot of people, no matter how old you are, should give the show a chance. It's ahead of its time, but it's ahead of its time in a way that it doesn't preach to you. It still gets its message across and is funny at the same time. Each Golden Girl has their own distinct personality. If someone had to say Rose, then I know she's a very talkative person who loves family and loves to talk about her hometown. Right? If someone had to say Dorothy, I would say, oh, she's very witty, but you can clearly see that she's longing to get with a guy. And maybe I'm talking too much about the show itself, so maybe I should do an entire video on the Golden Girls and how I feel about each character and the series and all of that. I don't know. But that's just how I feel. But yeah, watch the Golden Girls. And honestly, watch any of the shows that are recommended in today's video, because I think it is worth the watch. Alright, thank you guys for joining me in today's video. I had a ton of fun talking about these TV shows. It was really fun to really get into some shows that you guys have recommended. What are some TV shows that you would recommend down in the comments? What are some TV shows that you feel like everyone should watch at least once? Was one of those shows a show that I've spoken about? Let me know down in the comments. Also, if you have made it this far in the video, thank you so much, and be sure to leave a thumbs up if you did enjoy it. Also, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. We are currently at 224 subscribers, so thank you so much for that. We are aiming for 500. So if you are a fan of television shows and film discussions, definitely subscribe and hit the notification bell. But with all of that being said, thank you so much for joining me on this journey, and especially in this episode. But until then, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!